Mm. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over a couple potential moves, but as Gen Z says here, there is some breaking news, and we're going to scrap our next segment, or at least push it back here for a second. The Warriors and the Heat have officially made a trade. I know we just finished talking about this and how I did not think it was going to happen, but the Miami Heat are finalizing a deal from Shams 7 minutes ago. The Miami Heat are finalizing a deal to send Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors for Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick. We're going to go over all of that, all of the fallout for that in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you'd like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, February 5th. And it's my favorite thing, guys. We have some breaking news. We've got some breaking news, right? The Heat have officially traded Jimmy Butler, something that honestly I did not have confidence they were going to be able to get done. But right before the buzzer, just about 18 and a half hours before the trade deadline is up, they find a new home for Jimmy Butler, sending him over to the Warriors in exchange for a whole haul of players, centering around Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, who they traded for from the Nets earlier on this season, a massive get for them to be able to flip him after giving up, honestly, not too much for him earlier on, but to be able to flip him as a guy that was supposed to help them. They get that true second star now. Now you get a pseudo big three with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. I know Draymond Green kind of a weaker link there, and Jimmy Butler has not played basketball in a little while, but Jimmy Butler is a guy that has shown the ability to turn it on at any point throughout the season. We've seen him show up huge in the playoffs, and for a Warriors team that has really struggled, for a Warriors team that has come out the gates at about 500. Now, obviously, they started the season as one of the hottest teams in basketball, but a couple injuries really shut them down, really slowed down what they were getting. But let's look at this return for the Heat, right? Before we get into Jimmy Butler and the Warriors, obviously, it's a win for the Heat just to be able to move off of Jimmy Butler at all. The position that he put the Heat in terms of negotiating a trade for him was awful. He tanked his own value immensely. The Heat had a lot of trouble getting rid of him. He made it harder on the Heat themselves. And on top of that, Jimmy Butler has agreed to a new 2-year, $121 million extension. That news also just breaking. So the thing that was the deal breaker before has been fixed by Jimmy Butler. I bet, honestly, there was a report earlier this week that the Golden State Warriors were out because Jimmy Butler was not going to sign an extension. My best thought here is the Heat came to Jimmy Butler and said, "Hey, unless you sign the extension with the Warriors, you're going to be stuck with us the rest of the season." This is my best guess of what happened here. But now we get to see him team up with Steph Curry. And this is going to be a true last hurrah for the Warriors. They've got a lot of ground to make up. The Warriors sitting at just around 500 right now. They need this trade to kick into high gear quickly. A lot of teams in the West made their teams better, right? Obviously, the Lakers made their team better going out and getting Luka. You can make the argument that just for this season, the Mavs have improved themselves with the addition of Anthony Davis. That's going to be a pretty fearsome trio to deal with, at least in the current moment. You have the Spurs that went out there who are just a little bit behind the Warriors right now in terms of record. They're probably that team that's going to be the easiest to catch up. They went out and they got De'Aaron Fox, and that should be a huge get for them. The Warriors, they don't have to give up, honestly, all that much. There was always going to be a package surrounding Andrew Wiggins. Dennis Schroeder was seemingly a expendable piece after they got him earlier this season. Kyle Anderson, a pretty big get for the Heat as well, and only one first-round pick. Only one first-round pick is pretty good. A protected first-round pick. I know Jimmy's a little bit older, but he is, again, a guy that has really been able to show up in the playoffs. That's his history. The Heat do their best here. They weren't going to be able to make out like bandits in any situation because of the situation that Jimmy Butler put them in. And that's why this has dragged on for as long as it has. This is why it has continued to be an issue for as long as it has in this season. We've seen this saga go on for just under a month now, or just over a month. That happened right before the new year, where he had his press conference. He's been suspended 3 times. The Heat, again, I think looking at this trade, the Heat, I want to say they won this trade. I'd say honestly, overall, no one really got fleeced, right? We're always looking for winners and losers, but my immediate reaction to this is the Heat being able to get a pretty solid co-star in Andrew Wiggins, a guy who can be a great 3-and-D player, Dennis Schroeder, who can catch fire just about in any game. Pretty good get for them, and Kyle Anderson as well. The fact that they were able to get at least a first-round pick, I would like to see them get more, but they don't have to give too much, right? The Pistons also getting a little bit in there as being as far as being facilitators. They're getting Lindy Waters III and Josh Richardson from the Heat. So I think in this one it was a pretty fair trade, at least in my right off the gate assessment. I'm not seeing anything that's saying either team really won this trade by a lot. But the Warriors, they get their star. They get the guy that they've been trying to get for Steph Curry for the entire season, right? They tried and failed with a lot of different guys. LeBron, KD, Jimmy Butler, even at one point, they tried and failed with before ultimately landing him. But this is a huge get for them. This is what they needed to get the win back in the sails for Steph Curry, because he desperately needed this help. Steph Curry is a guy that I think can honestly play with anybody. His ability to facilitate and his ability to shoot and control the ball and control the possession with and without the ball is going to be huge. Jimmy Butler is a guy that can play off ball. He can play on ball as well. He's a guy that doesn't have to be the main guy taking over a game. We've seen him take backstage to some of his co-stars before, and that's fine. I think this fit is going to be really good for the Warriors. The Warriors got a guy that probably outside of LeBron and KD was going to be their best available option in the trade market. I really do like this trade for the Warriors a lot. I think they killed it. They only got rid of pieces that they were basically saying they were going to get rid of. They didn't have to give up any of their super big name young guys, so they don't have to mortgage the future either. It's gonna fit the timeline with Jimmy Butler. Again, we don't know how much longer Steph Curry has. Steph Curry is a guy that probably only has 3, 4, maybe 5 years of elite basketball left. We see a very similar timeline for Draymond Green, a very similar timeline for Jimmy Butler. So getting all 3 of those guys together, that was something that's very important, right? It'd be nice to go out and get a young guy. You weren't going to target a young guy, though, a young up-and-coming star, because A, probably weren't going to be able to get them, but B, it just doesn't make sense for what you're doing as a team, as an organization. I really like this trade for the Warriors. The Heat, they had to get what had become a locker room cancer out of there. They did a good job with compensation. But let me know what your thoughts are. A massive trade, and this trade deadline continues to get bigger and bigger. Just one more name to potentially move, and that is KD, although if I had to guess, he's not moving anymore after he narrowed his options down to the Phoenix Suns or the Miami Heat. The Heat no longer really have those pieces that I think the Suns would be interested in. But let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear them. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to get to those NBA power rankings. We'll go through all 30 teams. Talk about that in just a second, coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.